Night Prepper pre-party show. How's everybody doing tonight? I'm going to give people just a few minutes here to get through, notifications and ads if you want to watch ads. Appreciate that. Always helps me out. If you're brand new to the channel, I always talk about things. I do two. I drop 2 videos a week. Talk about all things preparedness, including financial preparedness, which is what we're going to be talking about tonight, and things that are going on in the world that the mainstream media doesn't want to seem to talk about. It's pretty important stuff too. I feel like all the prepper community needs to understand. If you're checking in the chat, please let me know if my audio is working here. I was having a little bit trouble earlier with my mic. If you guys can read me, give me a little 5x5 or something in there in the chat so I can tell. If not, we're gonna have to figure something out real quick. Hey Scott Hummer, good to see you. Appreciate it. All right, let's go ahead and get going here. So let's start out with this. Gold and silver has had a wacky week, hasn't it? You too, God is great. Appreciate you. Gold and silver has had a pretty wacky week. We had a couple days where it really did a nice little jump, a nice little pump up, which I think was. I think we're going to be able to explain why tonight. But thank you, appreciate it. Hey, Fred Petros. Um, think that gold, my channel is not financial advice. Keep that in mind, right? My channel is for entertainment purposes only. I was glad to see gold get above 2000, and I think it will now stay above 2000, but of course I don't have a crystal ball. For months and months and months, I've been telling my audience that at 1800 and 1850, I thought that was a really good price for gold, and that I was buying and buying and buying as much as I could afford to at that price. And kind of knew that it wasn't going to sustain that. So it broke the 2000 barrier a couple times, and this time it broke it, and it seems to be holding it at least for now. And silver's up around 24. So what's happened to suddenly cause this giant pump? Well, there's a couple things, but if you were watching mainstream media channels like CNN, for example, they were only talking about one story this week. So you weren't getting other things that were going on in the world, which is a shame, because one of the big things that happened this week is that several other countries are starting to make arrangements to purchase their oil and fuel in dominant denominations other than the US dollar. Okay, now that's really, really important, and I'm going to try my best to explain this. Why? Keep in mind that this is not my area of expertise. My area of expertise is psychology. This is something that I've had an interest in. I've been investing since, I don't know, early 1990s. So I'm affluent with it, but it's not my areas of expertise. Not much bacon. We're just getting started. We're just getting started. Um, but also, while we're talking here, let me sidebar here for a second. I did stack some other precious metals this past week. So if you're interested in seeing what I got, let me know in the chat, and maybe I'll show that at the very end. So I stacked some other kinds of precious metals this week on the advice of somebody that I trust a great deal, who told me that I should be doubling up my efforts at this point. Keith, good to see you. And Lee, good to see you. Appreciate you guys. All right, so let's talk about the petrodollar, right? How did this all start? If you go back to the 1970s, that's where this story really all starts. Richard Nixon, and people can say what they want about Richard Nixon and how his political career ended, but one thing Richard Nixon was really good at was foreign policy. And in the early 1970s, which was around the time that I was born, the U.S. economy was struggling. Inflation was really high. Actually, I would say worse than what we're dealing with today. Um, the U.S. dollar status as the reserve currency for the world was in question, and Richard Nixon made a move which was either very good or very bad, depending on whose viewpoint it was. But he entered into the petrodollar alliance with Saudi Arabia, right? And so what exactly did that mean? Well, it meant that the Saudi Arabia was going to price its oil in U.S. dollars and invest a portion of its profits in U.S. Treasury bonds. and in exchange, the United States was going to provide military protection to Saudi Arabia and other oil-producing countries in the world. Okay, now what that did was that it really cemented the U.S. dollar as the world reserve currency to exert greater, which allowed us to exert a lot of control over world markets and policy, world policy for all kinds of things. But it also caused a lot of conflict, and we're going to try to talk about that a little bit. So we've had that now since early 1970s, and now here we are 50 years later. We have had the dominant currency, which has afforded those of us who live in America a lot of privilege and a lot of buying power. It contributed to the growth of the middle class, pulled a lot of families, not all, but a lot of families out of poverty, right? And so, from the U.S. standpoint, that can be looked at as that it was a very good thing. Other countries might not see it the same way, and it's been argued that this was a contributing factor in a lot of world conflicts. Not, hear me out now, not the sole factor in any conflict, but a contributing factor, okay? So for example, in the Middle East, the petrodollar system, which required that U.S. oil, that oil be priced in U.S. dollars, gave the United States a lot of leverage over the oil markets, right? So we were basically having a lot of say in how things were done on the other side of the planet, right? And this created some tension in Middle Eastern countries, and it, especially for those who wanted to pay in their own currencies or to reduce their dependence on the U.S. dollar. So around the year 2000, Iraq decided that they were going to purchase in euros. Hey, Steve, good to see you. That Iraq was going to purchase their oil in euros, and this was seen as a big challenge to the petrodollar system. Was this a factor in the United States taking military action after 9/11 in Iraq? Well, you tell me, because the hijackers did not come from Iraq. Okay, now was there maybe some Al Qaeda elements there? Yeah, probably, but most of the Al Qaeda elements were in Afghanistan at that time, right? So, there's one. There was also, there was other factors too. Remember that. I'm not saying like the petrodollar caused all of these things. I'm saying it was a factor in all of these things. All right. 2014. Hey, Stray Kitten, good to see you. Hey, 2014, Russia Ukraine had a conflict, and this was also linked partly to the petrodollar system. Russia was trying to reduce its dependence on the U.S. dollar and to promote the use of the ruble instead for international transactions. Wow, 2014 sounds a lot like what's going on today, doesn't it? We're going to get to that. So Ukraine was seen as a key player in the U.S.-backed efforts to isolate Russia from the global economy and to keep the petrodollar in power, right? Oh, that's interesting. I wonder how that could be 7 years later contributing to some of the conflict that's going on, right? This has been characterized by disputes over gas prices and the U.S. dollar in a lot of gas transactions, and this continues to play out on the world stage. Venezuela. Venezuela has the largest oil reserves in the world, right? And historically has priced their oil in US dollars. But in recent years, it's starting to shift its allegiance there a little bit to other currencies, such as the Chinese yuan. So this has led to tensions with the United States, sanctions, and the United States, again, is trying to assert that its dominance with the dollar as the U.S. as the world reserve currency, right? I think I got a panda here. This is I don't know how much yuan that is. I thought it said it on there. Oh, 10 yuan. So that's a Chinese panda. It's a silver coin, but it's also its face value is 10 yuan. All right, so again, I want to reiterate that it's been, the petrodollar has been a contributing factor to some of these conflicts, but not always like the main reason why we've gotten into wars and things like that. It's a factor that needs to be considered. So what's happening now? So we've got oh man, I just had an article. Let me pull this up so I can reference it correctly. So this was an article called "A Spate of Recent Deals Raises Chatter of a Fading Petrodollar." And this was on Forbes, which I do like Forbes articles. You can check that out. The author was David Blackmon. Oh man, look at all these pop-ups. It's crazy. All right, so a couple things have been going on. In March 28th, right? Not that long ago, only a couple weeks ago, Brazil and China, two members of the BRICS alliance, we're going to explain what that is in a second, entered into an agreement to conduct all their future transactions using their own currencies, okay? So international trade, a lot of international trade was being done, not just oil, but in the US dollar because of its status as reserve currency. But now that is shifting. So the BRICS alliance, let's stop here for a second and explain what that is. So the BRICS alliance is a group of nations which includes Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and they are considering adding 7 other countries have petitioned to be part of that. So it's growing. Of the 7 other countries, 2 that are rumored to be petitioning to be part of the BRICS alliance are Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates, 2 giant economies. These countries have giant economies, make no mistake. Okay, so that's pretty significant if that does happen. March 8th, Indian customers have paid for Russian oil in non-dollar currencies, including the United Arab Emirates dirham, and I apologize if I pronounced that wrong, and more recently the Russian ruble. Multiple oil and trading and banking resources are reporting, right? Okay, I appreciate that, Uncle. Hey, Angie, it's good to see you. All right, so let's talk about the ruble here for a second. Let's sidebar again. Why I thought the ruble was going to crash, right? With all these sanctions that we're supposedly putting on Russia. I thought the ruble was going to crash. Well, it turns out the ruble's hanging in there pretty good. Why? Oh, I don't know. Maybe because they backed their currency with gold. What did the United States choose to back its currency with? The full faith and trust of the US government. How many people out there in the world are trusting the US government right now? So, what does that mean for the US dollar? Okay. I want you to just think about this. So, and I'm not like anti-American, guys. You know that. I'm very patriotic. I'm just putting out the information here. And if I'm getting any facts wrong, guys, please correct me. Again, I'm not an expert in this. I'm an expert in psychology. This is more of a hobby or an interest for me. So if I get anything wrong, you guys put it in chat and comments, and I'll take accountability for it. Okay. So the ruble's hanging in there, and I lost my train of thought. It'll come back to me. Saudi Arabia in March 29th, Saudi Arabia announced it has agreed to become a dialogue partner with the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, a Chinese-led political, economic, and security organization designed to compete with similar Western organizations. This latest indication of strengthening ties between Saudi Arabia and China came just weeks after the kingdom and Iran announced an agreement to reestablish diplomatic relations that had been brokered by China. South Africa is part of the BRICS alliance there. I saw your question. So pieces on the chessboard are in movement, guys, right? March 28th. This one was the most surprising to me. March 28th, French, our oldest allies, America's oldest allies, French oil giant Total Energies announced it had completed its first purchase of liquefied natural gas from Chinese oil company Sinopec using the Chinese yuan as the currency. All right. US dollar status, the petrodollar as the world currency, the reserve world currency is in trouble. It's fading. Okay. Does it mean we're total economic collapse today? No. It's still, what did I see? Jumping around here a little bit. My understanding is that 60% of oil transactions are still, 60% of the world's oil transactions are still being done with the US dollar. So we're still the dominant currency, but that power is shifting just a little bit. The pieces on the chessboard are shifting to one side. All right. So what would happen? Just a second, guys. I'm jumping around to my notes. Good questions, Uncle. Good questions. So what would happen if the U.S. loses its reserve currency status? Okay, well, that you may think sit there and say, well, "What do I care? This doesn't affect me." Oh, you better believe it does, my friends. It would mean reduced demand for U.S. dollars. If the US dollar is no longer the preferred currency for international transactions, the demand would decrease. This would lead to a drop in the value of the dollar, right? Uh-oh, where did we start this video about? Why did gold and silver suddenly jump? Okay. Gold and silver, one of the I've been trading in gold and silver, and I did some currency trading. Hyperinflation is right, Dan Talk. Gold and silver I've been trading since 2009, and I did some currency trading along the way as well. One thing, people have all their charts about like trying to predict silver's going to go to $200 an ounce, gold's going to go to 5, and you see these headlines on YouTube. You can ignore those. The only thing that I have seen since 2009 that, thank you, Keith, appreciate that. Yeah, if you're watching this and you're getting anything of value, please consider giving me a thumbs up. I really do appreciate it. If you're brand new to the channel, please consider subscribing. We drop videos twice a week. So the only thing that I've seen since 2009 that has consistently been a good predictor for whether or not gold is going to rise or fall is, guess what? The value of the US dollar versus other world currencies. Okay, that is the most consistent for predicting the rise in gold, and silver sometimes follows. I wish I could say that it always follows when gold increases. It sometimes follows. We talked about this in the video that I did with Fish and Pirate, that silver's true value is suppressed. So that's why it's really hard for anybody to say, well, silver's going to hit. Yes, that's true, Palmetto. That's why it's really hard for anyone to say like silver's going to hit $50 an ounce or silver's going to hit $100 an ounce. Well, the actual real price of it is manipulated. So anybody who's telling you that, or they're interviewing their local coin shop and they say this or whatever, like they really don't know. Okay, sorry. I hate to burst people's bubble. What else would happen if we lose our status as the world reserve currency? We would probably see higher interest rates, right? Tommy Temper, good point. I don't know. Um, we would see higher interest rates. The U.S. currently enjoys relatively low interest rates. Even still, even with the increases that we've had because of Powell, just cranking that crank way up, they're still fairly low by comparison. I mean, some of us have seen higher. If the dollar loses its reserve currency status, it may be more expensive for the U.S. government to borrow money, potentially leading to higher interest rates for the citizens. Next thing that would happen would be shift in global power. The U.S.'s status as the world reserve currency has allowed us to exert a lot of influence on the global economy and even politics, how other countries run their business, right? So if the dollar loses this status, our global power shifts a little bit and we lose a little bit of that influence. Maybe we lose a lot of that influence, right? Competition among currencies would fluctuate a lot. Now, for some people, there may be opportunities when I've used to do some currency training. Yes, it would take a lot with it. You're right. Yeah, that's a good point, Lee. I like that. That's a nice way of saying it. And yeah, make no mistake, U.S. is not going to take this sitting down. I might come back to that later. But the euro, the Chinese yuan, ruble, even, you'd start to see some competition and volatility in the currencies. So that will affect all other countries as well until the dust settles and a new reserve currency is agreed upon, right? Which could be something from the BRICS alliance, or maybe not. Maybe it's the euro. Maybe it's something else entirely. I don't know. Maybe it's gold, right? Maybe not really, but maybe it's Bitcoin. Not really. So the other thing is like all those nice things that we like getting from Wally Mart and Dollar Tree and Amazon and all those things like that. They become a lot more expensive, right? So my little knife addiction and all the things like this. This knife actually, I believe, I'd have to look it up. Honey Badger, I think these are made in South Africa, or at least the company's based in South Africa. It might be made in China, but prices on all that stuff that we import would go up for the U.S. for our citizens. So we got used to a lot of cheap or very affordable stuff. You go into Walmart, You can buy a new TV for $300, a decent TV. That wouldn't be happening with if we lose reserve currency status. Okay. Um, so I got some other notes here. Well, maybe we'll come back to those or not. Give me a second here, guys. Just reading my notes. Oh, international lending. That's the part I left out. Yeah. So as the issuer of the world's reserve currency, the U.S. has been able to lend money to other countries, charge interest in U.S. dollars. So this has given the U.S. also more control over the global financial system and allowed its use of economic power to influence policies for other countries. All right. So I said the U.S. would not just take this sitting down, right? What are our options? Well, obviously, we could see more conflict as if this thing starts getting like really interesting. Hey, Daniela, it's good to see you. More proxy wars is a good bet, right? We'd probably see more proxy wars. Um, there's another option that's on the table, and Fish and Pirate and I were talking about this. There's the possibility of a global of a currency reset, right? So how would they do this in the United States? Well, again, this is just speculation based on information that's currently available, but the United States is working on developing a digital currency with MIT. So you may hear people say CBDC, which stands for Central Bank Digital Currency. This would be, in some ways, if it helps you to conceptualize it, some ways similar to Bitcoin, but very, very different than Bitcoin in that it would be trackable. Everything you do. You want to buy a knife, Sarge? Okay, we know you bought a knife. How many knives did you buy this month? Right? How much gold did you buy this month? How much pew 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 did you buy this month, Sarge? Everything would be trackable, right? Everything. And so there's a lot of people out there saying that, yeah, it's coming, Mark. It's already in development by MIT. It's called Project Hamilton. If people want to look it up, it's not conspiracy theory, guys. It's happening. So there's a lot of channels I see saying things like, "We got to resist this." I know Ron DeSantis, and you guys know I don't usually get political on this channel. I know Ron DeSantis was signed a bill or something that said, Florida will never accept a CBDC. Well, good luck with that. Because if the federal government says this is what we're doing, we're switching away from the dollar to this, it's not going to matter what Ron DeSantis says if he's the governor of Florida, right? Now, maybe he'll be president at that time. I don't know. Yeah, that's true too, Anthony. You're right. So if it happens, if the federal government and the Fed decide to go with the CBDC, the digital dollar, the Hamilton coin, whatever the heck you want to call it, states can say they're going to opt out, but what's that going to do? Well, all the businesses in that state are going to have a lot of difficulty. How are you going to pay your federal taxes? It's just not realistic to think that a state could block it. And yes, I have a lot of concerns about it too, guys. I see your comments. I get it. I'm bothered by it too. I just don't think it's stoppable, right? And I see YouTube channels saying, "Hey, we need to resist this." I don't think we can. I don't think it's stoppable. I think this is happening. I can't tell you when. Now, Pirate said he thinks it's happening within a year. I disagree with that. Um, I think it's less than 10 years. Okay. I don't think it's going to happen in this presidential cycle. Could it happen next presidential cycle? It could. It could. Um, but it's coming. And I really don't think there's anything that we're going to be able to do to stop it. So what happens if we reset the currency? Well, a lot of people are mistaken and they think that you'll get like a debt jubilee. If you don't know what a debt jubilee is, yeah, I'm just reading your comments, guys. Sorry. Oh man, Bantalk, I'm sorry. I hate that, man. I really hate it. Bantalk does some good streams, y'all. You need to check out his channel and give him some support. Actually, mods, if you guys could drop his link, I'd really appreciate that. Oh man, sorry, that derailed me a little bit. Yeah, debt jubilee. Thank you. So what would a debt jubilee be? So a lot of people mistakenly think that means that that would wipe out your debt, like your mortgage, your car loans, your school loans. No, that's not going to happen, folks. Your debt would just be converted to the Hamilton coin or digidol or whatever the heck they decide to call it. They may choose to wipe out their debt. So the kings and the nobles will benefit from it. Us peasants will not. Yeah, people are mistaken, Bacon. Us peasants are not going to benefit from a debt jubilee. It's just not going to happen. Um, if somebody's watching this and you're like, a governor or a senator or something, maybe you'll benefit, but I'm not going to be. All right, sorry, Ben Talk. So how do you prep for this if you're a prepper? Well, I put out a poll, and I'm going to start winding it down with this. So if you guys have questions, I'll do my best to answer. Again, this is not my expertise, but if you have questions or comments, go ahead and throw them in. How do you prepare for this? So I put up a poll and I asked people, I put this up on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook, and on my community page. And I gave them choices. If you knew the petrodollar was collapsing, basically, what safe havens would you look at? And the choices were gold, silver, real estate, and crypto coin. Now, crypto coin got the lowest. It did get some support from people, but it got the lowest amount of votes on all four of those platforms, and I agree. And why do I agree with that? I do actually. I'm not anti-crypto. I actually invest a little bit in crypto, but make no mistake, if the United States does come out with their digidollar, Hamilton coin, whatever they call it, they're going to do their best to bury all the other digital currencies, right? So there'll be a slander campaign, even worse than what you've seen, like, oh, you can't trust cryptocurrencies and all this other stuff. And they'll get the media to run those stories, and 99% of the people will go for it, right? So that was the lowest one. The second lowest was silver, right? And silver had quite a bit of support. But I also agree with that, right? Silver is not necessarily the safest out of those four choices. All right. Now, a lot of people did say that I should have put the other types of precious metals on there. Okay. And I didn't, for the simple reason of, first of all, I assume preppers and stackers are taking care of this. I assume you've got your self-defense covered. And let's say you had 50,000 or 10,000 or $1,000 in currency that you wanted to put in a safe haven. $10,000 spent on this honestly is not a good investment. You may be thinking like, well, if the zombie apocalypse happens, okay, maybe, but I still could think of a lot of things that $10,000 would be better put to use at, right? So Anthony got it. He said land and gold are probably your best choices, and depending on which platform it was on, a lot of people said land, and that's a really good choice, especially if you can live on it. If it's property you can farm or hunt on or fish on, that's a pretty good safe haven. And different areas of the country, yeah, real estate is going to fluctuate, but it's, again, not financial advice. This is just my opinion, just entertainment, but it's generally a pretty safe investment compared to a lot of other things. And gold, again, gold value can drop, but it doesn't usually drop for significantly for long periods of time. Okay. Now, there was a period of time where gold was keeping pace with inflation. The last 2 years, that hasn't really happened, but there's a possibility that gold is just getting ready to pop, and I think that's what we saw this week. I think that's why you saw gold and then silver to some extent too. Silver actually went up a higher percentage. Um, Gold would be, because there's confidence that's getting lost, and the longevity of the petrodollar is, in my opinion, why you're seeing gold pop now. All right. Yeah, land you can live on, land can feed you. You can actually turn land into income depending on how you use it too, right? Maybe you're subletting some property. Maybe if you're a farmer, you're selling your hay to people down the street that have horses. There's all kinds of things you can do yes, and government can take it. You're right. And if you don't pay your taxes, government will take it, right? So it's not, nothing is 100% safe. I certainly wouldn't recommend you, yes, you should have some emergency cash saved up, but I don't recommend you put it all in emergency cash, because if they switch to the digital dollar or whatever, then you're going to end up having to convert it anyways. There'll probably be like a, yes, that's true. Eminent domain would have to give you fair market value, at least under current law. Um, the they would, if they switch to a digital currency, you would probably have a certain amount of time where you could trade it in, right, for um, whatever so you could trade your dollars, your 20s, your hundreds, whatever you've got saved back for the digital currency, and then eventually, I don't know what that time period would be, like a year, 5 years. I think when the euro when the European countries converted, they had, I think, 5 years or something like that. Uh, and then if you had that old European currency, it's not worth anything, right? If those of you who live in the South, like me, if you go to flea markets, you can find Confederate currency. It's not worth anything more than a collectible, right? Confederate currency is basically, you can use it for tissue paper if you wanted. It has no monetary value. It has a little bit of collectible value for people that are interested in it, but it has no monetary value. And that's what the dollar would become if they make that switch. Okay. This is my interpretation of it based on how I'm reading it. I'm not saying I'm 100% right. This is just what I see in development. And again, I don't think this is tomorrow. Don't panic. Sky's not falling. I didn't get a secret letter from some government agent telling me to warn my audience. Okay. Let's not get crazy now. You got time to prep, but get on it. Get on it. So the gold confiscation, we probably should do a whole video on that. Now, yes, in theory, they could demand that everybody turn in their gold, and it would be the same thing as if they asked everybody to turn in their pew pew pews. It's not going to happen. In fact, I heard of this guy who lives in South Carolina, that when that happened, his plan was to give all of his gold and silver to the homeless people in his area. All right. I heard there's a lot of boating accidents that are going to happen. So, not going to happen as far as people. Some people will turn it in. Yeah. Most people are not. Yeah, Palmetto says, as soon as they confiscated as much gold as they could, the U.S. government, then they immediately revalued it to their benefit. Right. Shocking. Yeah, well, that's true, Uncle. But hopefully, the more people we educate, the more people we can get prepping, the more people will, the less suffering there'll be. But even for us preppers, if this happens, if we lose the reserve currency, we're going to suffer too. Everybody's going to suffer. It's a matter of how much suffering, right? Um, so yeah, you'd have a certain amount of time to turn in your dollars, I would think, and then they'd be useless. And then they'd be a collectible. Basically, you'll see them at flea markets in the future. And I think it's going to happen. I really don't think there's anything that anybody can do to stop it. So prep. First thing would be get your debt paid down as best you can. I think that I've talked about this before. I think that some debt is okay. I think that obviously a mortgage, as long as you're staying within a good budget, is good debt. If your education is going to pay for itself, then that's potentially can be good debt. If you need a good vehicle, don't go crazy with it, right? Yeah, I don't think so either, Palmetto, and I don't think that many people would go for it anyways. Um, so pay down your debt, get your emergency cash savings. I still think that's a good idea because I don't think this is happening today. And if a tree fell on your house today, you want some emergency cash to get that fixed and maybe have to get a hotel or whatever you need to do. So emergency cash is still a good idea. Then you start thinking about your long-term food, medicines, things like that, right? We've talked about that before. You want to get a good prepper pantry to the extent that your space allows. And if your money's tight, then you train on the stuff that's free to train on. Get some, watch some foraging videos, get some foraging books out of the library. Pay for your fishing license, learn how to fish. You know, do what you can. Learn how to garden. You know, you don't have to get these super expensive seeds when you start out because most people are going to struggle when they start out anyways. Get the cheap seeds in your first year. Okay. Yep, I agree. Yeah. So then, you know, when you get your food situation straightened out, then maybe you start thinking about this stuff. Self-defense too, right? Um, Gold and silver. I'm still a fan of dividend producing stocks, right? It's when I buy stocks, I'm generally buying dividend producing stocks, companies like Coca-Cola. Um, I started reinvesting in some of the military industrial companies like Raytheon. Um, who else? Uh, Lockheed Martin, right? And why? Because we're shipping a ton of arms over to Ukraine, so we're gonna have to replenish that stuff. I had sold all my military industrial complex stocks after we withdrew from Afghanistan. Stupid. I should have kept them, right? Because the U.S., you know, is always involved in wars. That was stupid of me. So I bought. Yeah, and you could do some international investing too. I don't do too much of that myself, but you certainly can. Um, well, I'm trying to think what some for biopharmaceutical companies. I know there's some controversy about that in the prepper community, but I own stock in Johnson and Johnson and AbbVie. Um, Trying to think what other companies that I like. Um, yeah, but anyways, like some of the real estate stocks too that you get a good dividend off of, like shoot, I've shown you these guys before. Public Storage, which I think has ticker symbols PSA. Um, Cube, which is a storage company. Because they're very low operating costs, high profits. They tend to give good dividends back to their investors. Okay, not saying that you need to follow my advice. I'm just giving full disclosure about the things that I invest in. Okay. All right, let's start to wrap this one up. I do have something I wanted to a different. I'm going to shift gears on you. So if this was what you were here for, um, I appreciate you. If you want to stay for just a couple more minutes, I always end with something to think about or something positive. So there's a pretty big shift from the topic, so stay with me here. I like to watch near death experience testimonies, and if you remember, if you've been with me for a while, you know I had my own sort of near death experience, which I talked about in a live stream. If you want to, I'll check that one out. SLG. Thank you, Anthony. Appreciate the tip. Um, I like to watch these near death experience videos. If you want to watch the one where I talk about mine, just search prepping with Sarge NDE. It should pop up for you. Um, the so I like to watch these. I get a lot of comfort from them. I'm a spiritual person. I'm a Christian. Um, one of these near death experiences. Now take this with a grain of salt, right? So it's just this is more of a thought experiment, but I thought it was interesting. She was talking about that she went to a place where she was made to look at all of her own life experiences and memories in a way that was non-judgmental. It was just meant to be a learning experience. And one of the memories that she had to relive was being a little girl, and she pulled a cat's tail, and the cat screeched. And in her near-death experience, she said that she had to first watch herself do that, and then she had to experience it from the cat's point of view and felt this excruciating pain in her spine and just was overcome with sadness. Why did I do such a terrible thing? Um, and had to basically cry it out to heal from that. And then she had to go to her next memory. Right now, I don't have any idea if this was real or not. But I think it's an interesting thought experiment in that what if when you died, you had to relive everything that you did, good and bad, all the times that you were mean to somebody, all the times that you were hateful to somebody in real life or on the internet or, you know, and they had to experience it from their point of view. Would that change things for how you're acting going forward? Right? We can't change our past, and then I'm not doing this to shame anybody. I have things in my past that I wish I could take back. I have things that I said to people in the past that I wish I didn't say. I can't undo that. That's the past. So you have to accept it, and you have to learn from it, and you grow from it. And oh man, I'd love to hear more about that band talk. If you do a stream about it, I'd love to hear about that. Uh, you know, if you to relive all of that stuff after you die, would it change how you act right now? Would it change how you treat people, right? Just something to think about. And again, I'm not trying to shame anybody. I'm just trying to say that look at how you act and look at the person that you are and look at the person and think about the person that you want to be, right? So I've been doing a lot of work with this stuff. If you saw my video on my other channel, I talk about changing the person that you are, choosing to be the person that you want to be based on like a literary character. And I talked about that, fictional character that I always looked up to was Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I told you why I look up to Obi-Wan Kenobi, right? So how do I do that? Well, I think about it, and I think about, well, how would Obi I see that, Bacon. Um, how would Obi-Wan act? Would he have patience? Would he help somebody learn with a snarky, sarcastic comment? Would he um, use his wisdom, right? And interesting, Keith. Interesting. Um, so you just try to embody it, you reflect on it, and when you make mistakes, because guess what? We're all going to continue to make mistakes, right? I told you psychology was my expertise. When you're trying to change your behavior, it's never a straight line from, here's where I am and here's where I want to be. It's not a straight line. It's more like that, right? I've been doing hello there. It's like that when you're changing, right? So there's in substance abuse, there's relapse, right? But relapse is not just for substance abuse. Relapse is for eating. It's for changing how you treat people. It's for everything, right? So you're going to have those moments where you fall back to your old patterns, and don't beat yourself up when you do it. Just learn from it. Just say, oh shoot, I'm trying not to be like that. I'm trying to be more like Obi-Wan Kenobi. And so you work on it, and you keep little by little, you get better, and you climb that to the point that you want to be, right? Maybe it takes you your entire life. Maybe it takes me my entire life, right? Um, just something to think about, okay? It really, again, I don't know that her experience was real, if she was just, trying to get some internet hits, or maybe, her experience was real, but everybody's is different, and maybe that won't happen for other people. But it was just kind of a provocative thing. Like, man, I think about some of the people that I was mean to in my life in school, and when I was, kind of a jerk, and, some of the things I said when I was breaking up with girlfriends and things like that. And I'm like, man, if I have to go through that after I die and live it through their perspective, then I guess that's what I deserve. But I really need to think carefully about how I treat people going forward. All right. I hope that's helpful for you. I hope you got something out of that, and I hope it reaches people out there that it needs to reach. All right. I appreciate you all for sticking with me for this stream. Um, don't forget, Bacon usually goes live later on tonight, and check out his stream. I think Vision Preparedness was going live as well, so you might want to go check that one out. And anybody else in chat, please check out each other's channels. Just about everybody here in chat is a content creator, and everybody here is a good person and puts out good stuff. So, check out the names that you see here in chat and give them some support. All right. Y'all have a great weekend. Happy Passover. Happy Easter. I really appreciate everybody, and I hope your weekend is blessed. Keep planting your seeds. Keep stacking your silver. This is Prepping with Sarge.